Welcome to an episode of the Modern Moron. Wow. Here I am, just showing up at your door. How dare you? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how dare you? You just leave for months and months on end and you just show up at my door? You think you're going to sleep on the couch? You think I'm going to let you in? You just pop up in my headphones? Pop up on my speakers? No. You can't just waltz in and out of my life. Jeez. A lot of water under the bridge, huh? A lot of swabs up noses and needles in arms. A lot of masks being worn and not being worn.
Has the whole world gone crazy?
So why? Why am I showing up? What? Look at me. I'm a mess. Why do an episode? Why did we quit? So many whys. Why quit? Seemed like it was getting stale. I think I was told by a couple of you that it was getting stale. Listening to the senator and me bicker over the same old political issues and politicians mainly. Too much politics. It seemed like I became more interested in my opinions than in my curiosity. And this podcast, is this a podcast or is this more like a one-way conference call?
Please put yourself on mute.
Between six of us. But with over 1 million podcasts, think about that. There's 1 million podcasts. I'm still sitting down behind a microphone with my big fat ego, and all of it's just opinions, right? I don't want that. I don't want to have opinions. If anything, I'd like to lose opinions. My opinions are like the crap you stick in your garage or a storage unit or up in the attic. It's a bunch of worthless crap. If it had any value, it wouldn't be in a storage unit or collecting dust in your garage. That's what I think of my opinion. And my ego keeps trying to sell me these worthless opinions over and over again as if they have value. Here, take this.
I am a very stable genius, okay?
My goal is to evaporate my ego and lose all of my opinions. And this podcast doesn't really do that. So why this episode? I have a bit of a problem. It's not a huge problem, but it's something that is on my mind daily, and it's something I worry about, as I'm sure you worry about as well. It's our children. I have a soon-to-be teenage daughter that is soon to be going to high school. She's got some issues, as all kids do, and her grades are not, currently the best. And she doesn't particularly like school. Some kids like school, and some don't. Mine doesn't, at least not right now. And many kids this age, not all, mine doesn't look to me as a source of wisdom. I know that's crazy, right? In fact, based on the tone of her voice and most of her responses and the receptiveness to my advice, she thinks I'm an idiot or perhaps a moron. I mean, I have to bear some of the responsibility for that. First off, I put the word moron in the name of this podcast, and I'm also known to use self-deprecating humor from time to time, so I have not done a lot to garner a ton of respect by my own hand. Still, there are many parents who find themselves in the same boat. So grades are not the best right now, and her small group of friends seem to be getting better grades. And after next year, they're all going to be heading to the local private Catholic high school to which she now wants to attend. However, A, she may not have the grades to get into that school, and B, the private Catholic school she wants to go to is even more expensive than the private school we're sending her to now. And I'm not sure I want to pay that kind of money for a kid who doesn't like school. Again, I'm sure I'm not alone in this situation, but I've chosen to talk to a sort of expert, an expert in high school and college preparatory school, because she recently went to one, in fact, the same high school as my daughter has her eye on. She is now a senior at a liberal arts university in New York. We've talked to her before. She's the senator's daughter, and we talk about post-pandemic academic life and how that was just as hard to get used to as it was to go into quarantine. We talk about postgraduate work and the perspective on high school advice from a college senior. Maybe you will find some similarities in the changes to your routines as well. We start our conversation by talking about what it was like to come back to college. I thought she was going to say rainbows and unicorns. Oh my God, it was great. But it wasn't. It was hard. And like most change, it took some adjusting. It's a re-ego awakening of the modern moron with a college senior and a moron minor.
It was definitely a little weird when I first got back.
Really?
Yeah, I had been gone for so long, and all of my friends that I spoke to, and even some of the professors that I spoke to, said that they felt the exact same way, that it was just really hard to adjust to being back in person. I kind of described it as a second freshman semester.
Really?
I had to like relearn how to be a college student, because when I was home for a year, I didn't have to balance. When you're a first year in college, you learn how to balance work with life and chores and like taking, because you're like, you don't have your parents to like take care of you anymore.
Right.
And I was home for a year where I didn't have to worry about grocery shopping because my mom would always go, and I didn't have to worry about fitting in social activities into my work schedule. So it kind of was it was like a learning curve getting back into it. And it also was
Time management.
yeah, like time management. And I think it also was just a little overwhelming for all of us in that regard. And just, I don't know, with the stress of like worrying about getting COVID as well.
So that was kind of lingering as well?
Yeah. And like at my school, we had a vaccine mandate. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But we also, like, I have a lot of friends who are immunocompromised.
Okay.
And they, are nervous. And so I think, like, I know quite a few people who had a hard time mentally last semester, just because it's really weird. We only had a year and a half on campus and then a year and a half off campus. So,
which seemed longer?
oh, the weird thing about time is when you're in it, it feels like forever. But once you're out of it, it doesn't feel long at all.
Wow, you sound like you're growing up.
I don't know. I think maybe, well, the other thing is, I think maybe it feels like the school year goes by more quickly because you're so busy. So the first like few months of quarantine felt very slow, and they all like melted together, as was the case for most people, I feel like.
Yeah.
But now that I look back on it, I don't know. They both feel about the same.
So you've had some time to settle in now. How many months? You've been back for a semester or a quarter?
Yeah, I came back at the very beginning of September.
Okay. And so you've been in there for a while. How is it feeling now, today?
Oh, it's been good. I would say I was readjusted by probably October. I think because my boyfriend came and visited, and I think that helped me kind of not be as anxious, because I was pretty anxious. I met with my academic advisor and was just I went in just like crying, and I was like, I just forgot how to be a student. I remember writing my first essay last semester and like struggling so hard with just I don't know. I've always been very self-motivated, and it was so difficult to just like even start it.
And then did you get in your head a bit? Because it's the same words on the same computer screen either way, right? Were you trying to convince yourself this is exactly the same, and yet it felt different?
Yeah, and that's the weird thing, is that when I was home doing my work, it was, difficult, but I didn't have anywhere near the mental block that I did for my first couple assignments last semester. But like this semester, I just finished my first paper, and it was way easier. I mean, it was still like difficult because it's a paper, but it was
right.
much easier than last semester, where I feel like I'm the kind of person, the way I work is I usually set aside a day and like write the whole paper in one day. And last semester, I remember it just like, I kept like procrastinating, which is like not like me at all, because I was having such a hard time just sitting down and like doing it.
And now that you have some perspective, it's still a relatively short amount of time. Do you have any idea what you think was going on that September, October, November, when you were having such a hard time with papers?
I don't know. I mean, I talked about it with a lot of people, and I know I wasn't.
And your counselor, right?
Yes. And I know I wasn't alone, which I think made me feel a lot better. And even, I think the thing that helped the most was speaking to my academic advisor and her saying, I feel the same way. Because she was saying, she was like, these first couple sessions, I've had such a hard time. Like, my mind keeps wandering. I'm like not staying on top of my notes. She's like, normally I can give a lecture and not have to read off of my notes. I can just do it from memory. But now I have to read off my notes because I got used to having them when I was on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think hearing that, even that, like, somebody who, I don't know, I know I'm like technically an adult, but I'm not going to feel like an adult for a very long time. So hearing that somebody who
should have their shit together doesn't have their shit together either.
An adult, yeah, who's like well adjusted and like has her shit together, also was struggling. I was like, okay, that's very comforting.
Isn't it interesting? And this goes way beyond pandemics. But when you're having an issue, you feel so alone and isolated, and yet you're not. And when you find out, oh, there are other people that are struggling with name it, you feel a little, you can breathe almost.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it felt. Once I just spoke to everyone and realized that we were all in the same boat, it just helped a lot to not feel so alone.
Right. And your roommates, were they struggling with papers and their assignments and so forth?
You know, my roommate that I'm closest with, she's a dance major. And so she was struggling a lot. She's just like busy. The way our like curriculum works is we have this thing called theater thirds, dance thirds, and music thirds. And it basically is, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a way that they like set up their classes so that they're able to take more classes that do with like their specific interest. So she was in class like all day, every day. It felt like either class or workshopping or rehearsal or whatever. And so we definitely talked a couple times about just feeling burnt out, because I took 2 visual arts courses last semester, and I feel like visual arts always gets this rap of like being like an easy A kind of thing, but in my experience they are way more work than the academic, like more like traditionally academic courses I've taken.
Can you give me an example of what a traditional academic course at your university would be?
So last semester I took a course called 1001 Drawings, and then I also was in an art history lecture about the Baroque. And, you know, for my art history lecture, I wrote, you know, 3 papers, and I like went to meetings and all that kind of stuff. For my 1001 Drawings course, we literally did 1001 drawings over the course of the semester. And so
when you say did 1001 drawings, you drew 1001, or you sort of analyzed 1001, looked at them, critiqued them?
We each drew 1001.
Really?
Yeah. So each week we would have, the semester is a little over, I think it's 12 weeks. And so each week we would have about 100. Some weeks it was 75, some weeks it was 150, but we would have about 100 drawings.
And we're not talking
week.
Stick figures here. Are we?
Nope.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so my roommate would come in. I kind of had this system where I would set aside every single Saturday, and I would draw all day Saturday. I would just be in my room and be like a little factory. And I remember one time my roommate came in, and I literally was sitting on my floor just surrounded by different drawings, and she was like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just doing my homework."
And looking back, would you advise your younger self, like, put it off to Saturday? Or would you say, you know what, 3 days a week, write, draw 20 drawings or 10 drawings? Or your method is, nope, I got to lock myself up.
It's the same way I write papers. Like I said earlier, I just set aside a day and I like crank it out. I don't know why, but that's how I work best.
But would you agree, though, that when you're getting ready to write a paper, you've done the research, you've looked over your notes, and while you haven't put pen to paper or you haven't touched your fingers to the keyboard, you could be thinking about what you want to write while you're taking a shower, while you're going to lunch, while you're walking around kinetically. You're still thinking about the subject, and that is writing. Do you find yourself doing that a little bit?
Yeah, that's true. But I would do the same thing with my drawings as well.
Mm-hmm. You're thinking about your drawings?
Yeah, like we'd have course, because we had classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. And so we'd have Monday, and he'd give us our assignment for the next Monday. And I'd be thinking, like, as we did critiques and whatever, how I was going to apply what we were talking about to next week's assignment. So, I mean, yeah, I work that way definitely, but I think I work that way for both visual and written.
So this is your senior year, and you're thinking of getting your master's degree? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why do you laugh when you, why does that make you laugh?
Oh, it just feels so, I don't know. It feels very adult.
So the master's degree, I was talking to your dad. Does this involve you leaving the country?
Yes, if I get into the program I want to get in, then yes.
Yeah. And where would that be?
Edinburgh in Scotland.
Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yeah.
How long would you be there for?
Their master programs are only a year, so
Mm.
I'd be there from September to May. So like a regular school year. I don't know if it's to do with our generation or what, but when I was in high school, I worried so much about my future.
Mhm.
And like, okay, I have to get into a good college so that I can get into a good grad school so that I can get a good job and blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
And I used to spend so much time just stressing over things that in the end I don't really have any control over. So
Mhm.
now,
That's how I spent
like,
most of my life.
yeah, it's really stressful and draining. And so now, like, everyone's talking about grad school, and I would be really happy.
Like, I'm trying to draw 1,001 drawings right now. I can't be thinking about grad school.
I know, it's like I still have papers to do. I still like I haven't graduated yet, and I'm
So you don't have time to fret about the future right now.
yeah, and I'm also like, I'd be really happy if I got in, but if I don't, I'm okay with that too because I could just wait a year and reapply. It's not the end of the world kind of thing.
Wow, perspective. Pretty awesome.
It makes me feel a little bit calmer. And I already turned in my application. There's nothing I can do about it now. Either they're going to let me in or they're not.
Well, with that perspective, what would you tell your eighth grade self going into high school, or your freshman year self in high school?
Oh gosh. I think see, I don't think this is a good advice for necessarily every eighth grader, but I
Mhm.
was an especially high-strung
Mhm.
high-strung middle schooler and high schooler. I was so stressed all the time about my grades.
Are you sure
And
do you really think that was very unique? As we were talking about earlier, I wasn't alone. Now looking back and maybe talking to some of your friends in college, were some of them pretty stressed out? And middle school is not fun,
yeah,
right?
it's not.
No, it is not fun. And I'm experiencing that right now, which is why I'm curious as to what, just looking back 4 or 5 years, what you might have said to that person, to that eighth grader, ninth grader.
I would stress on trying to enjoy high school as much as possible because I got a really untraditional high school experience. I did not get to experience the high school that like my best friend in high school got to experience. And we've talked about this. When I got to college, she was like, and I like, started, having the college experience, she was like, it's kind of funny. I feel like you're having right now, what you're having is what I experienced in high school. You're just getting it now because you were so preoccupied with grades and like I had a lot of anxiety in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so she talked about how we kind of switched places where she had like a really, really fun high school experience and I didn't necessarily. And now she goes to Notre Dame and she had like a very stressful college experience, whereas we both were in the pandemic, so it's not like the most fun,
Right.
but I think comparatively I had a much
But that's
more
equal. That's equal. Both of you experienced that equally.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And like she had a couple things happen that made her experience a lot more difficult than mine. So we talked about how like for some people I think it's just, and also I feel like high school is so immortalized in our media as being like a really, really good time in your life that sometimes people pressure themselves, or if they feel like it doesn't reflect that image of high school, then they're like failing themselves somehow. And I don't think that's true at all. I think everyone just matures differently and has different priorities in life. I mean, I really liked my high school experience looking back on it, but when I was in it, it was really difficult because I was struggling with like my mental health a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But once I like dealt with that, I had a really good senior year of high school, but it was because I had to go through those like other struggles first.
I take it you've seen the movie The Breakfast Club, right? Everybody's seen it.
Yeah.
What's great about that movie and what I think holds no matter when is that there are different experiences in high school and not everybody's having a great time. Even the people that look like, you look at the jock or you look at the cheerleader or whatever that's getting the good grades, you assume everything is going great when in fact that might not be the case.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also curious because the things you're describing right now, my daughter is going through as well. Like she's having, a lot of frustrations and anxiety right now, doesn't know where she wants to go. And then all of a sudden comes into the picture because she's found her clique, I guess, sort of the nerdy kids.
Mm-hmm.
And all three of them are going to. So now all of a sudden I want to go to. But she's not pulling the grades like the way you view grades. You have been and are still very concerned about grades. That's the currency. You've got to get good grades, right?
Yeah.
She does not have that drive. And so, she's only 12. She's going to be 13 in a couple months. But we don't know how to make her a good student. We can't make her want it more than we do. And that's different for you, right? I mean, you stressed, you were on the opposite end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, that's why earlier when I was saying, like, I don't know if the advice I would give my 8th grade self would be the same for every kid, because I would say, from me, I should have probably focused a little bit less on grades, but I know for other people that's not always the case.
Well, you said I would tell my younger self to enjoy high school a little more. What does that mean? Like enjoy, what things are you referring to? What do you think that would entail?
Oh, I said no to so many things because I was like, oh no, I have to do homework. I have to write this essay.
Like what were the things you were saying no to?
Oh, just being invited out with people. I remember there were like a couple birthday parties I said no to. And I did go out once in a while, but it was like a rare occasion.
Do you think, were you saying no to those things because you had to focus on school and studies and you were obsessed with that? Or was there also an element of, that's the excuse I'm going to use, I'm a little antisocial, I don't feel comfortable social? Do you think you had some social functioning issues as well?
Oh, I mean, I definitely had social anxiety, but I think for those, that wasn't the case. My social anxiety came more in terms of like giving presentations and that kind of stuff. And actually once what's funny is that I think anxiety gets written when you're younger, gets written off as being introverted. And once I got put on medication and started going to therapy, I became like so bubbly and so outgoing, and it was really, really weird. So I don't think it was necessarily that thing, because my social anxiety it didn't often come up as like a peer or like a friend oriented kind of anxiety. I think it mostly had to do with me wanting to get work done, because I would do, like, it was quite a common occurrence where my parents would pick me up from school and my dad would be like, oh, I have to run an errand. And I would freak out because I was like, I'm not going to have time to do my homework if you run this errand, which was definitely a point of contention with my parents. And I think one of the things that made my mom go, okay, like our kid has a real issue, because I would like cry and like freak out if they were going to stop anywhere, because I was like, no, I have to do this and this and this. Yeah, I kind of also learned that grades are like I kind of approached it as like a bartering system type thing, where I used to worry about getting like A's on every single assignment. And then I kind of, senior year, I kind of realized that I don't have to get an A on every assignment to get an A in the class. So I would kind of like pick and choose what assignments to worry about and to like put a ton of effort into based on how much effect they were going to have on my overall grade.
You were sort of learning time management a little bit.
Yeah, which I know is probably not like what teachers want to hear, the fact that I would, like kind of blow off certain assignments, but it helped me maintain a normal and healthy balance between work and social life. And it's what worked for me. And I still graduated with like above a 4.0. So it's not my fault that that's how the grading system works.
Well, do they tell you at the beginning of your classes in high school, they say 50% of your grade is this and 10% of your grade is this? They're basically
exactly.
telling you, don't focus on this as much as that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I remember there was one class, because I wrote for the newspaper. I wrote for the newspaper actually for like 3 semesters total, I think. Either 3 or 2. And the first semester, no, not the first, the second semester I did it, I had kind of realized that our final project had way more weight on our grade than anything else. And I had a week where I had this like really big paper for one of my AP classes due. And it was due the same week that we had like an article due. And so I just kind of blew off the article. And I made up for it with my final project. And I still got an A in the class because I was like, I'm not going to stress myself out worrying about something that doesn't have as much of an effect in the long run as this other thing does.
It just occurred to me as a person, my academic career is the opposite of you. I never got good grades. I think those 10% chunks are for the marginal student that is like, look, you're about to get a D, but if you do this 10% thing, it'll bump you up enough to get a C or a B. So students that are really good can just nail the final exam and nail the midterm and be good to go. But some idiots like yours truly needs to do that little 10% thing. They need to piece it together more than someone like yourself.
Speaking to the idiots like me comment, I think our education system is like very, very unfairly geared towards people like me who are really good at memorization, because most of your classes before you get to college are memorization, and that's all they are. They're not
short-term memory.
Yeah, and they're like not worried about. That's something I love about my school is we don't really have tests. What we have are lots and lots of papers because they don't care about what you can remember because you can Google anything. What they care is how you apply what you've learned to actual problems or to different prompts or whatever, which I think is much more valuable than just, memorizing the periodic element table or something like that.
Yeah. Although I guess in science and math, you do have to kind of know, the knee bone is connected to the shin bone. You kind of need to remember those things.
Yeah, you do.
But it teaches you critical thinking, I think is what you're speaking towards. And essays and that type of thing shows you have critical thinking and what the progression of your logic type of thing, as opposed to, fill in the bubble, A, B, C, A, C, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it allows you to just to kind of learn how to think for yourself and make informed arguments. Because depending on like what field you end up going into, it's not going to, I don't know. I guess it's different for everyone because I'm at a liberal arts school. So I think most of us are going to end up going into fields where that kind of thinking is important. As opposed to, like my friend who's going to be an engineer who needs to know mathematical equations.
Right. There are things to memorize. Let me ask you this. In high school, and more so right now, especially coming back, do you have access to therapists and to be able to talk things out with a regular therapist at your university?
Yeah, we do. We do have a health center, and there are therapists on campus. I've never spoken to them, or you know what? I did go to group therapy for a little bit when I was a first year. Because my first week, I kind of freaked out. And I had these feelings of anxiety starting to come back. And I thought that they were going to be a long-term thing. And then by week 3, they were gone because it was just college anxiety, not clinical anxiety.
Right.
So I did go to a group therapy for a little bit, and it was like an adjustment group for, like transfers and first years who were adjusting to college life. But I haven't gone to.
Was that your first group therapy experience?
No, I had done it once before. When my anxiety, when I talk about like my anxiety in high school, it was really, really bad. Like I kind of downplay it a lot of the times, but I was in an anxiety treatment center program.
Really?
It was like, it was kind of like day camp where like my mom would drop me off and I'd go and I would have group therapy and then I would meet one-on-one and we would like do an activity and then I'd meet one-on-one with a therapist and then do some more activities and then I'd go home. And I did that for like a week, I think. So I had done group therapy before, but I really enjoyed group therapy. I know it's not for everyone, but I enjoyed the social aspect of it. And like we were saying earlier, the feeling of not being alone and like having other people who have similar problems.
You know what she said at the beginning of the episode? The weird thing about time is when you're in it, it feels like forever. But once you're out of it, it doesn't feel long at all. The wisdom of perspective. Why do I feel like Burl Ives in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer right now?
You.
You know, I also love the ease with which she was able to discuss her mental health going through high school and in college. I have no idea how another college kid or high school kid would ever end up listening to this episode, but wouldn't it be great if one found it that needed to hear that message of not being alone in feeling alone, or feeling anxious, or feeling nervous? You never know. Next episode, whenever it is that I just show up in your headphones again, we'll continue our discussion about writing papers for college, breakups, and therapists, and good luck finding a therapist since the pandemic because they're all booked. Seriously, if you feel like you need some therapy right now, and who doesn't, it just isn't available, at least in the healthcare systems I'm familiar with. We also spent some time talking about what it's like to study art and art history versus creating art in college. I hope you'll check it out. Thanks for listening to The Modern Moron.
He looks like a child molester. Louise, don't serve him. Let Gene bring it.
Bob?
Why do I have to get molested?
Because he's not going to molest you.
Why?
Because you're heavy.
Bob.
Yeah, hold on.
Heavy kids can get molested.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to molest us fat?
That's enough.
Bob.
It's not that. I mean, Gene, because you're older.
Tina's the oldest. Make her do it.
Yeah, but Tina's not good with the customers.
Bob.
I'm good with the customers.
Not really.
I'm great with the customers.
She's autistic. She can't help it.
Yeah, I'm autistic.
Bob.
Just a sec. No, you're not autistic, Tina.
How many toothpicks on the ground?
Don't play this game again.
Come on, look, how many toothpicks?
No, it just involves me cleaning up toothpicks.
100?
Bob.
No.
100?
It's 3.
There's 3.
Okay, how many now?
Bob.
3.
No.
No.
Ugh, you're the worst kind of autistic.
You can't even count.